took phi. And many of you may remember him, but he will be new to a great many of you. He's been trained in electronics. He's trained and practiced in naturopathic medicine and spiritual psychotherapy. And his study includes science, psychology, philosophy, mystical and spiritual teachings into a holistic overview of life. And his work there, and he conducts seminars there in Missouri, is a blend of spiritual principles, intellectual clarity, and guided by the heart. His workshops are conducted periodically, and I'm sure you can get on his list. He has given away some tapes here. He's had a table. Some of you had a chance to meet him, but he's been here all the time and waited until Sunday to get on. And here he is. Welcome. Give him our big Sunday morning welcome, Dr. Michael Ryce.
Dean has in his hand?
Yes.
He's walking away with it. Forgot it this morning. Thanks. I'm going to unwire my wires here so I can get to that board over there. Maybe we should move the board over a little bit in this direction so I'll be able to do it without getting into trouble.
Let me have it just a second, will you, Michael?
Sure.
Is Betty Warner here yet? Yeah. Here she is.
A description of a rough day at the office. I went to work this morning and found myself in hot water with my boss, and she canned me. I went to the can before I cleaned out my desk. I went home, my wife was in the kitchen canning. I went through to the living room to sit down on my can. My wife said, "Help me if you can," and I said, "I can't." Now, for you and I, that's a perfectly logical statement, isn't it? We all understand what that means. Why do we understand what that means? How is it that we comprehend what was just said? And I'd like to offer that the reason we can comprehend what was just said is because we have neural structures that match the ideas that I just put out. And that our understanding of what happens outside of us does not come from outside of us, but comes from the neural structures which are stimulated by the events presented. Without the neural structures to understand that statement, we'd be lost. Imagine someone 2,000 years from now and 5 cultures away trying to make sense of, well, let's see now, a can is a metal thing that you open with a can opener, and he went into the office and he was in hot water. Now, well, maybe it was a hot tub factory. Let's see. She put him in a can. How does all that work? Now, we have idioms. We have neural structures that make sense of the whole statement. How many see a microphone in my hand? Pretty well universal. Guess what? None of you see a microphone in my hand. What you see is an image generated by your brain. Through the eyes, we cannot see anything external. The brain cannot show us anything but the content of our own neural structure. The reality that each of us experiences at every moment, if we're experiencing it through our mind, is one strictly generated by our brain. They did some interesting research at Stanford University, and you know how if you take a prism and you put it at the right distance, everything turns upside down? Well, this fellow developed a set of prism glasses, and when you put the prism glasses on, everything turns upside down. 6 hours later, The brain will only tolerate the upside down image for a maximum of 6 hours. It turns the image right side up again. Now, when you look out through your eyes, are you seeing what's out there? No. You're seeing an image generated by your brain. Take the glasses off, and everything turns upside down again. And 6 hours later, the brain turns everything right side up again. Every reality that we experience through our brain belongs to our brain. It doesn't belong to the outside world. If I ask you, now my artwork isn't great, but are you prejudiced against left-handed people? He says, use the other hand. How many know what that is? It's a house, obviously, eh? It's not a house. It's lines on a board. The reality house comes from your brain cell structure. If we brought someone from the jungles of South America and presented that to them, would they say house? No. Not if they don't have a neural structure that generates a reality called house. They would look and say, lines on a board. Every reality we see is strictly and individually our own. We have the external world, and I thank Bob Beck for this at the last conference 5 years ago, for reality and actuality. That out there is a world called actuality, and in here is a world called reality, and every one of us experience our reality according to the way we have structured our minds. And we project our realities upon the world of actuality. When I look at that framework on the board, when I look at those lines, a meaning in my mind is projected on those lines. But I'm really looking at the content of my own brain cell structure and projecting it on that framework. We've got some 250 or 300 people in the room here this morning. We've got 250 or 300 realities happening right now. Most of us have been trained that reality is what's going on out there. Reality cannot be and never will be what's going on out there. It's always what's going on in here. So if you asked your neighbor, though externally for all of us, exactly the same thing is happening, if you got a description from your neighbor of the reality that they are experiencing, if each one of us got up and said, what's happened so far here this morning, no two of us would have the same description because no two of us have experienced the same reality. And once we recognize that reality is something that happens within inside us, the next step becomes the recognition that every reality that you experience through your mind is from your past. You cannot experience a present moment reality through your mind. Now, wait a minute, Michael, I just looked at my watch. My watch said it's now. What are you talking about? Let's do a test. One of the keys to developing another set of faculties with which we can actually experience the present moment rather than just our past is to be able to step back from your mind and observe it in operation. Kind of become the thinker apart from your thoughts. So if you would for a moment, how about stepping back from your mind and putting your right hand on your right ear? Would everybody do that? Now take a look around the room and notice that pretty well everybody's doing the same thing. How about putting your hands down? Now why did everybody do the same thing? Well, obviously, Michael, you asked us to. Are you sure? Let's take a look. My mother and yours trained you. This is a hand, this is an ear, and it's the right side. We have those neural structures, and those neural structures guide us and give us our instructions when they are stimulated to activity. Let's imagine that Lee, sitting up here in the front row, has a different past from everybody else in the room. Let's imagine that her mother taught her this was an ear instead of this. What did Lee just do in response to my instructions? Did she do this like everybody else? No, she did this. Why? Because the external actuality stimulated a different reality, a different set of neural structures in her than in everyone else. And she followed the instructions from her past, just like you followed the instructions that came from your past. Well, I'm not sure about that, Michael. That still doesn't gel with me. let's put a time delay in there. It makes it easier to observe the mind in operation when there's a time delay. So once again, step back from your mind, observe it in operation, and this time, instead of putting your right hand on your right ear, how about putting your right hand on your gizzard? Would everybody do that? Put your right hand on your gizzard. Now notice, as you observe your mind, what's going on in your mind. Are you flipping through neural structures? Is it going something like this? Well, let's see gizzards. Chickens have a gizzard and it's up here, or is it down here? And do I have one, or just chickens? Is that something like what your thought process went like? So notice that you went seeking through your past to find a meaning for the present. If in every event in your life you must seek through your past to find a meaning for the present, where are you living? In the past. Those who lived in the past were called the dead, buried by the dead, the blind, led by the blind. If we simply follow those neural structures out of our past, we cannot experience a present moment reality. And you know, there's a reason why they call it the present. And the reason is because whenever you're there, there's a present, a gift. And if you feel like life isn't giving you exactly what you need at any moment, it's because you're hanging out in your past. And you're not experiencing the present, the gift that the Creator has designed specifically for you. Now, those who are guided by the realities of this atom body, you know, if we go back into the ancient scriptures, in a very practical sense, they spoke about Adamos, or atom. And this body-mind unit is a storage device for realities. And whenever those realities are stimulated or activated through a law called the law of resonance, that reality presents itself. And if you and I, as the spiritual beings that we are guided by those realities, then we are guided by Adamos, which means literally red clay. We're guided by the atom part of us. Now again, if you go back to the ancient scriptures, remember the creation story? And it talks about Adam. You remember one of the first things that happened to Adam after creation? Remember what they said? He fell into a deep sleep. Now, have you ever noticed that you can read the whole of the Old and New Testament, you won't find one word about Adam waking up? Why not? It's because most of us are still asleep in Adam. We're still guided by the realities of this clay body. The neural structures from the past that guided our fathers and our fathers' fathers and their fathers before them. You go back to Job, and he was trying to say this to people when he said, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs. We're just running out the program. And that's not what we're capable of. Now, those who are guided by the realities in the mind were called sons of men, sons of Adamos. But there was another stead that human beings are able to stand in. And that stead, that place that we're able to stand in, is not that we are guided by Adam, not that we are guided by the neural structures from our past, but that we become sons and daughters of God. And not in a religious sense. That the Creator, who set this whole thing in motion, said we have the option of living in one of two worlds. We can live guided by the past, sons of Adamos, daughters of Adamos, or by meeting one simple criteria, we can be sons and daughters of God. Now, many have bought into a lie. Oh, there was only one son, he died 2,000 years ago, and you can't get into the club. That's not the truth. The Scriptures invited us, and the Scriptures are not religious texts, they're law texts. They speak of the lawful, orderly process of becoming what you're capable of becoming. And what it said was, as many are sons of God as are led by the Spirit of God. That there is another place, and this is a practical, not religious sort of thing. It's practical where you live, that there's another guidance system available than the neural structures out of our past. And in fact, we're told that there are neural structures available to us that will guide us into becoming our true heritage. Sons and daughters of the Creator, guided by a different reality than the atom body, than the atom mind offers us. Now, if there was a neural structure within you that would guide you into that, would you be interested in finding it? Would that be a rather, perhaps, desirable thing to have? And I'm talking now in a practical sense. I'm not talking Sunday morning. Happens to be Sunday morning. But that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about 24 hours a day, 8 days a week. I'm talking about where you live, where you work, where you have your relationships, where you have your bank account, where you have your business. If there was a neural structure available to guide you into total well-being and happiness, would you be interested in uncovering it? And would you be willing to do the work of meeting the criteria to uncover it? It takes work to do that. Now, there was a word, and there is a language that, with my background in electronics, when I went to naturopathic school, it became very apparent to me that the body was just an energy system. And then I found the Aramaic language and discovered that the Aramaic language is a language which perfectly describes energy systems theory. And when we go back and find that language, which incidentally was a native language of not only Jesus, but 4 of the initiators of the world's major religions, besides Jesus, total of 5 of the major religions came out of the Aramaic language. There's something unique about this language. And it describes all of the human dynamics, all of the interactions that human beings can have in terms of energy systems theory. Now the word this word in the Aramaic describes what we as human beings can achieve and are capable of in terms of and in relationship to that neural structure. Where do you suppose you might find that word? Let me describe to you from the Aramaic what that word means. The hun part, H-O-U-N, is a possessive word. It means you will have. The A, E-Y part means raised from a latent to a conscious level. That is, to a level where it will be available to you. And then the tuv means, in the Aramaic language, the neural structure desired by the Creator for all human minds. A structure which makes available thoughts and actions that increase happiness and well-being. So let's put it together. You will have, raised from a latent to a conscious level, the neural structure desired by the Creator for all human minds. A structure which makes available the thoughts and actions that increase happiness and well-being. Now, where do you suppose you might find that word in the Aramaic language? There was a master who gave us a discourse on the higher levels of living. They called it, and symbolically, a sermon from a mountain, the Sermon on the Mount. And there are several statements that begin with what we've had translated us to be, blessed are they. Now, if you interpret that as a religious thing and you don't have a religious bent, blessed are they becomes kind of, so what? So I really am enjoying the way I live my life. I really don't need to be blessed. But what if you knew that that was the key to achieving well-being and happiness? That line isn't an offhanded blessed are they in the Aramaic language. What it says, and what that is that following each of those statements, blessed are they, or supposedly blessed are they, there's a criteria that you have to meet to achieve what? Tuvehum. To have in your possession, raised from the latent to the conscious state, a neural structure which will guide you to happiness and well-being. So every time it says, blessed are they, this is what it says. And then following those statements becomes a practical set of directives, not a religious doctrine, a practical set of directives that says, here's how you can be in touch with that guidance continuously. Here's how you can shift out of all of the realities stored from the past, what Job spoke of as the lives of the fathers, the neural structures accumulated. Every thought you're thinking is literally at every moment being structured into your genetic structure. And were you to conceive a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure every thought you have ever thought. And if they don't know any better, if they're not awakened spiritually, they will fall asleep and they will be guided by those neural structures, and that will be their whole lives. Some 700 million people live and die every century and never awaken beyond running the programs of the past, beyond unfolding the lives of the fathers with their hostilities, their fears, their hatreds, their vengeances, and wonder why life doesn't change. And the neural structures within themselves that they don't want to be responsible for, they project onto others. If you and I interact, and remembering that every reality that we experience is uniquely our own, in the traditional relationship, if you and I interact and you bring up a reality in me that I don't like, what do? I invite you to change, right? And if you won't change, I'll give you a little bit of motivation, I'll punish you. And if punishment doesn't work, I kick you out of my life. And I say, well, there I am, now I'm finished with that one. But if I haven't realized that I'm experiencing something of my own reality, what I do is I tuck that reality back inside and walk away, thinking I'm finished with that. But it's only a matter of time before somebody else shows up and does it to me again. Does what? Activates that neural structure. You see, when you hold a neural structure in your mind, a reality in your mind, that reality is an energy. What's one of the things we of all people know about energy? It's in motion, right? Anything that's in motion does what? It creates an energy wave. All energy waves do what? Carry information. So every reality that you hold in your mind is continuously telegraphing its contents to everyone around you. Now, who do you suppose is going to show up in your life if you hold a negative reality in your mind? It's going to be someone who's perfectly in tune with it and can live it out with you. Okay. We were given an energy system. There's no such thing as a body. We were given an energy system. And relative to every energy system, there are only two qualities of energy. There's that which builds the system up, that which tears the system down. In the ancient languages, when you put a tear-down energy into your system, they said you had violated the temple. You put a reality into this structure that didn't belong there. Now, the mind functions through every cell in the body, and wherever you store your negative or your disintegrative realities, you violate tissue integrity. And tissue starts to break down. That's the cause of all, not some, all human disease. And machines and pills and supplements and diets can assist us and empower us to get through that, but they cannot change our minds. It remains for you and I to do that, to change those old realities that tend to guide us out of our past generations. And it's not until we wake up out of those old neural structures that we have a chance to do something different. And what we tend to do is go on violating the temple. We tend to put those realities in that are in tune with the ones that are already there. Remember the ancients said, don't allow yourself to be molded by the world. If you let yourself be molded by the world, you're going to end up moldy. Because you're going to take in realities of death and destruction. And if you do, wherever you store them, you will decay that tissue. Now, the word for doing that in the ancient languages was sin. Now, sin in its original form was meant to be, the word was meant to be positive feedback. It comes from medieval England and the archery ranges. When you fired at a target and you missed the bullseye, the scorekeeper yelled, sin, off the mark. You put an energy in that doesn't belong in the human system. It's now part of your neural structure and your guidance system, and it will take you off the path, off the mark. Take another shot. Put something different in. If we refuse to do that, then we go on violating this structure, this energy system, until finally what happens? We've accumulated so much negative reality, so much quote-unquote sin, that the whole tissue structure starts to decay and fall apart. The energy system starts to disintegrate. Now, it wasn't a religious dogma. It wasn't a religious statement when the Master said, the wages of sin is death. The result of putting negative reality into structure, hate, fear, anger, criticism, gossip, slander, condemnation, and vengeance, is death. You're going to kill yourself. And it doesn't matter how justified you are and what they've done. If you put it into your system, you're the one that's going to live it out. You get the original, they get the carbon copy. And they may not be home for delivery. There's a little poem that, to me, very adequately expresses that, and it's called Each Moment. Each moment of joy, each moment of giving, each moment of love is a moment of living. Each moment of anger, each moment of lying, each moment of resentment is a moment of dying. All our moments add together, like the digits in a sum, and the answer tells us plainly whether life or death shall come. And there is no one. Now, they may deserve your hostility, your criticism, your vengeance, but a new criteria when you recognize it's your energy system that gets violated becomes the rule. They might deserve it, but do I? And what is it in me that has invited them? You know, you go back to the ancient scriptures and they'd understood exactly how life worked, and they said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. Now, that word heart in a modern updated language would be the unconscious. Take care of what goes on inside of you, because they're the energies that will attract and set you up in the circumstances that you're going to face next in your life. And it won't be the guy that does it to you. All he's doing is responding to what you've put out there. Are you willing to be that responsible? Probably the greatest atrocity ever done to humankind down through the ages is that we have had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. You and I are creative beings. But if we lose our creative capacity, which is spiritual, to old degenerative neural structures or old degenerative realities, then life never changes. And we never have an opportunity but to create out of our unconscious dynamics, and out of our heart comes our lives. How do we get access to another neural structure? Tubehun. That neural structure that was implanted by God becomes your conscious possession and is activated when, first of all, what we're told in the translations is, are poor in the spirit. Now, you know, so many people who are of a religious orientation want the spirit in their lives, but it sure does make it difficult when the criteria is you have to be poor in the spirit. What does that mean? Well, what they did in the second letter, which is in the word masenki, what they did is they missed two little dots that totally changed the meaning of the word. The word wasn't poor. The word was those who have a home. Those who have a home in their spiritual nature rather than in their minds, rather than in the neural structures of the past. Those who are guided by the realities of the Creator rather than the accumulated realities from their past are sons of God and have a home in what was called Ruka Dukudsha, or spirit. Ruka Dukudsha in the Aramaic language. Every discipline, the sciences, the psychologies, all have a translation or a meaning for that word. If you listen to Albert Einstein, for instance, he called it the unified field. He said there's something a whole lot bigger than us that permeates everything. And I call it the unified field. I think it was, who was it? Churchill, who said we have the privilege of being separated by a common language. So he spoke of, Einstein, of the unified field. In the psychologies, for instance, Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious. The theologians speak of the Holy Spirit. Jesus spoke of, and not in a religious sense, Ruka Dukudsha. And what he called that, if you go back to the Aramaic language, the definition of that word was a power or a force placed by God in the mind of man that undoes the effects of his errors and teaches him the truth. That's a little different than a religious principle about some kind of doctrine about spirits. That in our mind is a power given to us by the Creator. And one of the criteria for having access to the neural structure that will guide us to well-being and happiness is to have a home. in that power rather than a home in the realities generated by the human mind. Any reality that is generated by your mind that is unlike love is not true, and it's uniquely yours. And if you want to stop living in it, you've got to change it. The teachings have been so degenerated. We were told to forgive. You remember the statement that said, you must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother? I remember that being presented to me as kind of a bleeding heart statement, forgive from your heart. What it said was, you must cancel from your mind, your source of thought, or your unconscious, the wrong that you project upon your brother. In other words, every reality that comes forward in you is your own, but if you deny that it's your own, because of the way the mind works, the mind is an evidential device. And if you tell your mind, show me that somebody else did it to me, show me that somebody else is responsible for this reality, the mind must generate a reality that proves it was somebody else. Now, if you've been through a particular reality 87 different times with 42 different people, and you're the one that was there every time, you might start to suspect that maybe you're involved. Maybe you've got something to do with what happens in your life, and it isn't all them. But as long as you're in denial of that, your mind cannot show you that you're the one who's making the error, and therefore correction becomes impossible. Therefore, moving to that higher neural structure becomes impossible because you instruct your mind to give you the reality, they did it to me. And so we must begin to look into our errors in thought. So that becomes the next criteria to achieve the access to this neural structure implanted by the Creator. Now we're told, it says in the next instruction of the Beatitudes, those who mourn their wrongs, for they will be comforted. So a lot of people want to sit around wringing their hands. It's not what it said, folks. What it said was, and the word in Aramaic is abili. And it spoke of a sect of Jews in that age that, number one, were devoted to social truth. Number two, professed, and implied is corrected their errors, and the errors of their society. So rather than those mourning their wrongs, that neural structure becomes the possession of those who look into their errors in thought and correct them and are devoted to social truth and the correction of those. And then we're told, it says they will be comforted. Is somebody going to come along in your suffering and pat you on the back? No, what was spoken of in the original language, in the original words of the Master in the Sermon on the Mount, doesn't say they shall be comforted. What it says is, and the word is nitbeun, what it says is they will be cured of mental stress. That kind of makes for a whole different game, doesn't it? When you know that, there's a reward by being responsible for my life and looking into my errors of thought. I get to alleviate all of my mental stress. And what is the medical community now starting to tell us? 60, 70, 80, 90, 95% of disease is caused by what? Stress. He was talking about this 2,000 years ago. He knew word for word every human dynamic and exactly how it operated. And he was not a religious teacher. He was a teacher of life. This is how it works. Blame somebody else for your mental stress. Blame somebody else for what's wrong in your life. And your mind will generate a reality that always proves it's them. And notice that if you bring it up in me and I get rid of you, I turn around and somebody else shows up and I get rid of you, and somebody else shows up and I get rid of you, and somebody else shows up. The word forgive in the Aramaic language as a tool meant a tool with which you change a neural structure, with which you change a reality in your mind. It doesn't mean I'm going to let you off the hook. The Greeks came along and they tried to translate. Imagine translating my original statement. I found myself in hot water with my boss and she canned me, etc., etc. Imagine translating that into another language, even today. How often have you run into someone who speaks a foreign language and you say something to them and you say, well, how do you say that in your language? And they go, you can't say that. There aren't any words for it. Each language is a cultural perspective on reality. And there's certain things that have not been named in certain languages. In the Greek language, they hadn't understood that reality was what happens between your ears. They thought reality was something out there. And they didn't understand that they did it to themselves, that there was a lawful process. They asked and they received exactly what they asked for. And so they translated forgive as let them off the hook, pardon them, which is a totally Greek concept. Has nothing to do with Jesus' teaching on forgiveness. Never, ever forgive anyone ever again. And never, ever forgive yourself, because you can't. If you think you have forgiven yourself, if you think you've forgiven someone else, then you lose the opportunity to actually forgive. Now, if you want to pardon yourself for doing something, or you want to pardon someone else, wonderful, do it. But don't think that your pardoning is forgiveness, because it's not. And George gave us the example the other day of, well, if they call this a marker board and they call this a lectern, as soon as everybody switches their neural structure, this will become a lectern. And if I say to you, go and write on the lectern, and you come up and write on this, you're not going to ever go over here and do it, are you? Because that has already been accomplished. If you think you have forgiven by pardoning someone, you will never change the reality in your mind. And that means, I think a couple of speakers have said it so far, those who can't look into their past are condemned to repeat it. Why? Because it's a neural structure in their mind. It's a reality in their mind. And out of that reality is generated their whole lives. So you want to be cured of mental stress? Find this neural structure and forgive every other neural structure that doesn't belong in the system. The next step in meeting that criteria, it says, those with humility, for they shall gain the earth. Now, what did it say in the original Sermon on the Mount? Well, the word that's been translated, those with humility, was makiko. And what it means is those who have the mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with only the good in others. Humility in the Aramaic language doesn't mean I grovel in the earth like a worm. It doesn't mean I make myself lower than you. It doesn't mean I put myself down. Humility means the quality of perceiving and cooperating only with the highest and best in each other. You see, this mind works by resonance, and whatever we resonate with, we reinforce in our own structure, and it becomes that which governs our physiology. I would love to see the test conducted of 30 minutes of hate, 30 minutes of anger, 30 minutes of fear, and watch what happens to brain and blood chemistry. I guarantee the shift is going to be dramatic, and it's going to be toward the chemistry that's been associated with death. Because when you step outside of the structure, outside of the system, and function in a way other than what the system is designed, you set up in yourself the chemistry of death. There is no such thing as chemistry. If we go back to Einstein, Einstein says that matter and energy are interchangeable. In fact, what he said, and I quote Einstein, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. What there is chemistry. And chemistry, in its essence, does not exist except as solidified mind energy. Let's imagine you're driving down the highway. You're in a pretty level chemical condition. You've driven this road for 20 years every morning on the way to the office. Some mornings you get to the office and you don't even remember how you got there. Or you get home and you don't even remember the drive. Anybody ever do that? Now, if we were measuring your chemistry at that moment, I guarantee there wouldn't be many changes or shifts in your blood chemistry. But let's imagine we're riding along with you and measuring your blood chemistry as you drive. And you're in that pretty level condition. You're virtually unconscious. And all of a sudden, up ahead of you, you see some blue lights or red lights, depending on what state you come from. Do you think you're going to measure a change in your blood chemistry? Or more importantly, let's say you look in the rearview mirror and you see some blue lights or red lights coming behind you. Is your chemistry going to change? Dramatically. You're going to pump adrenaline into that bloodstream and all sorts of physiological changes are going to happen. Now, is there chemistry in the system? Absolutely not. What there is, stored in the adrenals, a lot of mind energy linked to fear, which is where adrenaline comes from. The mind energy of fear pumps adrenaline. Did the adrenals produce adrenaline? No. They produce solidified mind energy. When that mind energy is resonated, it appears as a chemical in the system. Let's imagine that you've got that fellow from the jungles of South America in the car beside you. And you say to him, when you spot those blue lights and you're in a big chemical change, look behind us. And he looks back and he goes, oh, blue lights. So, does he have any chemical change in response to it? No. Why? Because he doesn't have the mind energy associated with blue lights that you and I do. Now let him drive on the interstate system for 2 years and put him in that seat and measure his chemistry when he looks back and sees them. And you're going to see a chemical change because he will have had the time to accumulate the mind energy that will manifest in his structure or apparent structure as a change in chemistry. If we go to the opening words in the book of John where we're told in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us, what it literally says is in the beginning was the mind energy and the mind energy became flesh. That our mind energy accumulated in this structure becomes our chemistry. And there's certain mind energy that belongs in this system and there's certain mind energy that doesn't. And the mind energy that doesn't will manifest as negative chemistry that ultimately they'll say, oh, well, this chemical's missing or this chemical did it, that chemical killed you. Did the chemical do it? No. The mind energy that you took into the structure that didn't belong there destroyed the system. Energy systems can't die. If you go to Corinthians, it says, with man, death began. We made up the mind energy that destroys the structure. Now, let's imagine that you're in the jungles now with this fellow in South America. And he gets the whiff of a rattlesnake. Now, he knows the smile, or pardon me, the smell, the smile of a rattlesnake. He knows the odor. He knows the smell of a rattlesnake. And his chemistry changes instantly. He's on guard. He's looking for it. His eyes come forward. Because that chemical change, his eyes will move forward and give him wider peripheral vision. All sorts of changes will happen in his body as a result of the mind energy in his adrenals that is resonated by the presence of the whiff of a rattlesnake. Now let's imagine he turns to you, and he doesn't know English, and he attempts to explain to you in his native tongue that he's gotten the smell, there's a rattlesnake nearby. Now he can go through all kinds of gyrations, and yes, we might read from his body language and such, but let's not bother with that yet. Let's just imagine his words. It's not until he finally gets his little translator out and he goes and he looks down the list and it's like, rattlesnake! And all of a sudden there's a major chemical shift in your body, isn't there? Because he's resonated mind energy in your system and it appears as a change in chemistry. Forget chemistry. Forget balancing chemistry. You can measure all the chemistry you want and you can put in everything you want to balance it, but if that person whose chemistry is out of balance continues to hate, continues to fear, continues to condemn, continues to put mind energy in that doesn't fit in the system, it will imbalance the chemistry and it'll move back toward its disease state again. And it will access neural structures, it will access information from his past genetic structure, which will also manifest as his chemical or her chemical condition. There is no such thing in the human condition as aging. And the human energy systems can't age. Energy systems only change when you change the input of energy. If you've got an oscilloscope and you've got a perfect sine wave, you can't get anything but a sine wave until you put a different energy into the system. And then the reflection of it will change. It's exactly the same in the body. It's an energy system. And every cell continuously regenerates itself. If we regenerate out of the neural structures, the realities of man, of Adamos, then we all know that we age and die, and so that manifests as chemistry, and they measure the chemistry and say this chemical is associated with accelerated aging. Is it a chemical? No. It's mind energy. Can you remove it? Yes, if you understand how to forgive. If you know how to change those neural structures. Otherwise, each new generation of cells, and we've been told it's just the human condition. A little fear, a little anger, a little rage. That's just the way human beings are. That's not just the way human beings are. That's the way we've chosen to be. And there isn't any pill, and there isn't any supplement, and there isn't any chemical, and there isn't any machine that can change your capacity to choose. Yes, all of those things can be very helpful in moving you in the direction of, but you must awaken out of Adamos. You must awaken from that deep sleep and choose to change your mind. They've made mysterious everything that really functions for changing the human system, and grace has been made this mysterious things that, some people get knighted with it and some don't. Every human being has been given grace, and grace is the simple capacity as an awake, aware, human, spiritual being to change your mind anytime you want. When you change your mind, your chemistry will change, your physiology will change, and instead of accumulating negative realities, and depending which school you come from, between a year and 7 years, every cell in the body regenerates itself. If we continuously put degenerative energy into the system, the next generation of cells comes out a little weaker, a little less well-formed, and degenerated. We call it aging. The next generation's a little worse and a little worse and a little worse. If we stop putting hate and fear and anger and criticism and condemnation and gossip and slander and vengeance into this system which is governed by mind energy, and we start to remove those neural structures from the past, two things will happen. You will literally start to youth instead of age, and you will come to the point where you access the neural structure that the Creator put into every one of us. Go back to the Old Testament, it says, I've written my law in your hearts. It's in there. That word heart means unconscious in a modern language. Inside of you is the exact guidance system that will take you to everything that I've offered you. But if you junk it up and overlay it with garbage, you'll never access it. So you must become one who looks into their errors and thoughts to be cured of those mental stresses, and then act with humility. Look to each person that you see and look for their highest and best. Because if you resonate with something lower than that, whose chemistry does it become? Your own. So if you really want to activate your highest spiritual states, you need to start to look for those states in everyone else. What you look for and resonate with in each person, you reinforce both in them and in yourself. Start to look for the higher and the better, and that energy, the predominant resonant energy in the system, is what manifests as the physiology and as the action and as the words that we each speak. What's going to happen if instead of, oh yeah, I can see this to criticize about him, oh yeah, he's bad at that, oh boy, that was really terrible what he did there, whose chemistry is changing as a result of bringing in that mind energy? That's me. And then, in terms of all energy systems, when I resonate with that person, what am I reinforcing in them? I'm going to resonate that exact action, and they're going to tend to do it. When I start to see the higher and the better, when I have true humility, not only do I change, but they start to change. So the result of humility, the result of having that mental quality of perceiving, cooperating with the good desires of others, is that, and it says, they shall gain the earth. What it really said in the Aramaic is they will earn the earth. It's not a matter of working hard. Working hard is a way of keeping us outer directed. The world of the ego, the world of the past, says keep looking out there. It's out there somewhere. If you just get enough, if you just have enough, if you just do enough, one day you'll find it. And you'll notice we're not called human gettings, human doings, or human havings. We're called human beings. We need to get to our spiritual being, and that's when everything starts to fall in line. What's the next statement in the Beatitudes? The Beatitudes, the attitudes of mind, the neural structures you must access to have health and well-being. It says, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now, what did the Master actually say there? What was this criteria about for achieving access to that neural structure? What he actually said was, those who have the mind structure underlying just and fair behavior and judgment raised to the level where it controls our perception, reason, memory, and physical action. That's a little different than those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Oh boy, we can get into that righteous indignation, can't we? But what are we indignant about? We're indignant about what's going on in our own minds. Anything that is less than love, which is our true created spiritual nature, is total and complete BS. That's belief system, by the way. Did somebody have a different reality for those initials? Was anybody offended by the reality that you have for those initials? If you were, notice the offense happened in your mind. I got belief system up there. The reality it resonates in you if you are offended by it is an offense you commit against yourself. Every offense that you experience is an offense that you commit against yourself. And until you change your mind, there's nothing that's going to change your life and the way it manifests. Are we willing to meet the criteria? Are we willing to have, not hunger and thirst for justice, but access in ourselves the mind structure underlying just and fair behavior and judgment? Bring that to the level where it actually controls our perception, our reason, our memory, and our physical action. And the result of that, it says, they will achieve justice. Not by forcing somebody else to do something, but by accessing that in yourself. When that's the predominant resonant vibration within your structure, it will organize your system into a healthy condition, and it will organize all of life around you into that same healthy condition. And then the next criteria, we're told, says those who are merciful. Boy, how do we get to be merciful? What did he actually say was the criteria with this statement in order to achieve access to that higher neural structure? What he said was, those whose love is pure, encompasses reason, judgment, and behavior, and gives without demand or request for return. That's the criteria for accessing that higher neural structure. That you come to the point where your love is pure and encompasses your reasoning capacity, your judgment, your action or behavior, and that you give that love without demand. Many people today, oh no, I don't know, they might hurt me if I love them. Love is the being that we are, and when we extend our love to each other, we get the reward of experiencing love. If I decide that you don't deserve my love because of the terrible thing you've done, and I withdraw my love, who gets to experience a lack of love? I do, not you. The fact is, I can't love you. Love is not a verb. Love isn't something we do to each other. Love is what we are. And when we let who we are extend out through the neural structures in our mind and through our body to each other, then we get the reward. Remember they said, and I could never figure this one out till I understood this from the Sermon on the Mount. Remember they said love is its own reward? Experiencing your own spiritual nature is all the reward you need. If you want something more than that, you're embarking on a cheap exchange program. It's not love. Oh, they've got to give me. Well, they've got to. No. You do it just because that's what awake, aware, human spirit beings called love do. What will be the result? What he said was, they will receive the love on which all law hangs. That would be, they will receive in their lives the support of the law. The lawful process and unfolding of the universe will support them in their aliveness, those whose love is all-encompassing and given without conditions, without request for return. That life will return exactly the same thing to us. And we will receive that. You remember that statement in the Old Testament that said, yea, though 1,000, 10,000 may die around you in battle. If you're in touch with me, you can't be touched. You're totally and completely safe. In the midst of battle, I'll be your shield. I'll cover you. That's what will happen if we meet this criteria. And then the next criteria was the pure in heart, or that's what we're told. Now, the word there in Aramaic was dadsian, and what it said was, not the pure in heart, it said, those with completely sound and purified minds who are in possession or control of the source of their thinking. That is, if you eradicate the unconscious mind. The human spiritual being was not designed to have an unconscious mind. The reason we have an unconscious mind is because there are things we don't want to be responsible for, there are things we don't want to look at, there are things that we hide from ourselves. And when we hide from ourselves, we become unconscious, and our whole creation becomes unconscious. So if we are in that place of a completely sound and purified mind, and in possession and control of the source of our thinking, it says they will see God, or that's what's been translated. The word there was nikazun, and it said they will comprehend Allah. Now, what did Allah mean in the Aramaic language? Was it just God? No. What Allah meant was the invisible, unknowable, ultimate source of truth. That if we're in touch with this, we will have a comprehension of that which is otherwise not comprehensible. We will have the capacity to observe the action of the Creator in our lives directly and come to know and comprehend that action. And the next one is, blessed are the peacemakers. That is, the neural structure belongs to those who, not our peacemakers, the Aramaic word was abde. It says, those serving and working effectively to produce peace and understanding in accord with God's will. That's what a peacemaker is. It's not somebody who goes around quieting everybody down. It's someone who serves and works effectively to produce peace and understanding. And they will be called not sons of men, but children of God, in a very real sense. That our realities that will appear and unfold in our neural structure will be the realities of the Creator. In Matthew 6:33, we're told, seek the kingdom of God and its holiness. At least that's what we've been told it was said. But that wasn't what was said at all. The word was zadikuta, and what it meant was those who seek to uncover the whole group of neural structures and attitudes of right thinking and action. Now the ego says, no, look out there. Don't look for the neural structures implanted by God. It's out there. There's got to be something out there that will solve, a magic bullet that will take care of it all. And most people are pursuing it. And remember the Master said, don't look in the world of rust and moth. It's not there. Seek first the kingdom of God? No, that's not what he said. He said, seek first to uncover the whole group of neural structures and attitudes of right thinking and action. They're in your mind. And you must choose to do it. Nobody else can do it for you. And forgiveness is a way that we weaken the human neural structures. We change those neural structures that have overlaid the implanted guidance system. And as we forgive, and basically this is what we'll be doing in our workshop tomorrow. Why is this happening to me again? We'll be getting into a step-by-step process of how do you forgive? Incidentally, it's a workshop that we share anywhere that we go. It's always shared free. And if you have any groups anywhere around the country that would like to have access to that workshop, be in touch with us. We'll be glad to travel as it fits in our travel schedule and present it. Our commitment is to make it available to every mind on the planet. Any civilization that evolves without a capacity to forgive becomes accumulators of negative realities and projects them on every other person in their lives until we have nothing but enemies and we must destroy the world. The alternative to that is you and I can choose to be responsible for every reality we experience. We can forgive those realities and have access to, possession of the latent neural structures which will guide us to well-being and happiness. And I thank you all for allowing me to be with you this morning. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Michael. So many times when a speaker gets through, I think, I wish I'd have said that. You ever feel that way?